Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu tabletop role-playing game rules by Chaosium. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. While we try very hard to stick to language for all ages, listeners should know that this podcast may include mature themes. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., that may bear resemblance to entities living or dead, is strictly coincidental. My name is Michael Diamond, and for tonight's game, I will be your keeper. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Old Ways Podcast. I'm your keeper, Keeper Michael, and we return to Horror on the Orient Express. At the start of the show, as we like to do, we'd like to thank our listeners and our Patreon supporters, and those of you who've enjoyed the show so far. We hope you continue to listen and to shed and spread the joy of our show everywhere. And so, we're going to have introductions now. To my right.
Hi there, this is Mike. I play James Robert Fraser, who is currently making best speed in the general direction of away from a burning building.
Yes, the clock tower, it seems, has had a bit of a kerfuffle in it and is now on fire. And so, in the glow, the wonderful torch glow that is a 50-foot, 60-foot clock tower, you are making haste away. To Mr. Fraser's right.
Hi, I'm Rena. I play Lady Elizabeth Fitzroy, and I might be a little bit responsible for the fire.
You know, I don't have any sort of player history that would tell me that you might be responsible for a fire, so we'll just assume that it's a coincidence. We are in the missing Simon Griffith formation, and so we will just make note of that in our logs, that he will be slightly sleepy and perhaps stumble about a bit, but it is of no concern. He'll be back post-haste. So to Giles's right.
Hi, I'm Miranda, and I play Maggie Bellinger, and my dreams of flight may have been dashed this time, but not forever.
Nay, not at all. Miss Bellinger, you are a force to be reckoned with, that is clear, and you'll soon have to make that clear to really everyone around you. They need to know the truth. And last but most certainly not least.
I'm Martin, and I'm playing Richard Courtney. The only dream Richard is having is one where he might wake up.
Yeah, I think that's a fair dream, perchance anyway, is one perchance to wake up for you, having taken some very, very swift and impaling blows from the statue, the marionette of death. You've crumpled in a heap, and you've been taken out of this burning clock tower by a few of your compatriots. So at some point, you'll have to thank them for potentially saving your life, because as we all know, Professor, you're not out of the woods yet. And so we are going to lift the curtain on Venice under the cover of darkness as a set of rather urgent footsteps are being plodded along here on our course towards the hotel, the Denali there on the Grand Canal. Overhead, the smoke from fires and the voices of many Venetians are calling fire. Fire. You hear the word over and over as the locals begin to react to the trouble that the Palazzo Rizziniani has come under. I would ask the group, given your previous, we'll say, issues with gondola rides, are you continuing to stick to land?
I don't see why we would need to stick to land. My followers are in the water.
That is clear.
I'm just wondering whether there are even any gondolas about in all this kind of panic and chaos that seems to be occurring around the burning clock tower.
Well, there weren't many, if any, gondolas last time on your way in. And true enough, Mr. Fraser, it does seem that the canals are still empty of them. The black pools you found every so often in the canals at night now are seeming to have grown. And there's almost this slick foulness that they're leaving against the ancient bricks here of the buildings of Venice.
Am I right in thinking that we can make our way back to the hotel without having to cross any major bridges or anything like that? We can just kind of use the back streets.
Yes, indeed, sir. You had helped plot out the route there, and with some foreknowledge of the city, given your previous travels, you were able to find a way to circumnavigate the rest of the way to the hotel without having to take the water. It will take a little longer on foot, obviously, but you do not have to go to the water unless you are forced to.
I think, bearing in mind we're carrying an unconscious man with us, we might raise a few eyebrows if we try and hail a gondola, even if there is one. We may be better just proceeding at best speed on foot.
Don't you think, with us having an unconscious man with us, that the best thing to do is to get him to a doctor or a doctor adjacent as quickly as possible?
I do indeed, but well, unless we can travel within sight of one of the canals and hail a gondola if we happen to see one, then I really don't see that waiting around in the hope that one will appear out of thin air will profit us anything.
Well, perhaps if we see one on the way.
Aye. Well, let's keep moving regardless. As you say, there's no time to lose.
All right.
The whole time Maggie's thinking, I could have freaking just flown Richard back if you would let me jump off that building.
Yeah, you have some deep conflicts when it comes to the movement here by land, because you're fairly certain that if you had just leapt from the building, you'd be flying by now.
I know. I could have flown. My children are in the water, and he just wants to travel by land. The two things I'm least excited about.
I'm going to call for, because I assume that the group is being somewhat, we'll say, cautious about their movements. I'm going to call for a spot hidden roll.
I'm assuming this is one Richard's not making.
Yeah, correct, sir. You are unconscious.
All right, so let's see.
23 under 63, that is a success.
Mm-hmm.
Hard success, even.
Hard success for Maggie as well.
69 under 80.
Nice.
More than just a success.
So the three of you, as you're kind of tracking your way through, and Simon is assisting you carrying the professor, even though he's wounded, Mr. Fraser, he does seem to want to continue to help as best he can.
I'll make sure that I'm taking most of the weight.
You make your way down to a point in the city where you begin to see that main boardwalk that leads, and you know that not far from here, you can get to the Grand Canal and move along this leading boardwalk that goes past the Greedy Palace all the way down to the Denali Hotel. And that's really when you get your first look at the waters beyond the Grand Canal that lead to the Adriatic, that lead out into the larger sea. You have seen many coastlines and you've seen many waterways. But off in the distance from this space, this canal, perhaps hundreds of yards out, there is something in the water that has come out of the water. It's a large shape. It sits in the shadows and in the darkness. It's not moving, and so at first you think perhaps it's a building. And you know that there are smaller islands that make up the entirety of Venice that wrap around this section. So maybe it's just the clouds, maybe it's just the shadow. But you get a sense that there is something out there. Those of you, like Lady Elizabeth, who has a hard success, that is not a building. That is not a building. Your mind repeats the sentence 3 times. It's not a building. There's something in the sea. There's something in the darkness out there. That is not a building.
I think perhaps we should avoid the water for now.
Have you seen something? There's something out there, but I can't make out what it is.
I just think we should avoid it and get back to our hotel as quickly as possible, and then leave as quickly as possible, Mr. Fraser.
Aye.
Well, regardless, here or there, time is what's of the essence, so, we can continue to travel, but water may be the fastest.
Well,
I don't see anything to be afraid of.
Well, that's all well and good, but we need to get on. We need to get these men to Paul so he can take a look at them. Then, well, I suppose we need to pack our bags.
You continue movement along the boardwalk. You get to the same block of land that the Piazza San Marco is on. And this is really when you start picking up a few people on foot. These people are clinging very closely to the sides of buildings. They are hunkered down as if there is some storm coming. You can tell, too, that each one of them is almost paralyzed with fear. Something has come over them. And whether it's the fog, whether it's the smoke of the people of Venice who are stricken with whatever plague has come to roost here, they all shy away from you. They all look away. They all keep themselves from making any sort of eye contact with you. They're horrified, it seems, by what is going on. And so you press on and eventually get to the Hotel Denali, which the door is shut and locked. You can tell held fast when you try to open it.
Have we got no way of getting into our hotel other than knocking on the door and hoping they let us in?
That seems to be true.
In that case, I will hammer on the door.
You pound on the door a couple of times with the intention, right? With feeling, because you know that something is not right here, and you know you need to find cover. You feel it in your bones. Another swell of fog and rain sweeps through the front of this boardwalk. And there's a deep, resonant bass tone that takes over the boardwalk, a growing movement of sound. You see the young gentleman who opened the door for you last evening come again to it.
Quick, let us in, man.
He opens up the door, and you can tell he's armed with a rifle.
There's no need for that.
Now, he's not pointing it at you. It's down and it's at rest. And he hurries you inside.
What is going on? Why are all these people cowering?
The black shirts, they've come through again. He shuts the door behind you and presses it over into the locked position. They came through the front here, and the priests of the church here wouldn't, and the people wouldn't listen to them. The black shirts began beating people.
Damn them. Damn them to hell. We have no time for that right now. Thank you for letting us in. We need to get up to our room. As you can see, we have an injured man here.
I see that. I think there's a member of your party upstairs who's been wondering where you are.
Aye, indeed. It's him we must see.
Do you need help? He slings the rifle over his shoulder.
Yes, yes. If you could lend a hand, that would be much appreciated, yes.
He helps pick up the professor's legs and kind of moves up the stairs with him. You can tell just from his stature and perhaps age, he's someone who's probably had to do this before. It's possible that he served during wartime.
How many of these black shirts are there?
An hour ago, there was as many as 15. They'd taken up positions by the palace and at the mouth of the canal on either side. And they were doing what fascists do. They'd cleared some of the streets in the immediate area. They were telling people to go home and go inside. And when people came out to assist the sick, they beat them back into their homes.
But why tonight? Why all of a sudden tonight?
I don't know. The evening paper never came either.
They've probably locked the doors of that. All they want printed is Mussolini's propaganda.
There's word that they're trying to shutter some of the routes out of town.
Are the trains still running?
I don't know. I've called the station twice this evening. I've got no answer.
Well, we'll deal with that when we have to, but right now we have slightly more pressing matters. Thank you. Thank you for your help.
Of course. He gets the body of the professor into the professor's room. He assumes that's where you're going with it.
Yep, I'll go down and get Paul, unless Simon does or somebody else does.
Yeah, go. We'll let you go. I suppose we'll let you go get Paul. I suppose I'll ask Maggie what when you return to the hotel. What are you up to then?
Maggie would probably sit with Richard for a while, at least to make sure that he's okay. Can we see the water from where, like, Richard's room would be?
You guys are sort of in the interior portion of the hotel, about halfway back. You can see a nearby canal, or I should say you can see a nearby Rio, but you can't see the Grand Canal or the immediate of the Adriatic there.
Maggie would probably then be going back and forth between making sure Richard's okay and also gazing out at whatever water she can find, finding herself drawn to it, knowing that it's probably going to be the answer to all of our questions.
That's fair. You stare out. You can go to the front of the hotel and you can stare out some of the windows there. That's what you'd like.
Oh, actually, I forgot I have a new leg.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get these pieces with the other pieces. So, assuming Paul's on his way, when Paul gets there, then Maggie would leave to go reunite this leg with an arm and a torso.
Okay, so you're preparing for that. Lady Elizabeth, you're going to your quarters, I would imagine?
Yes, I find myself desperately in need of rest.
Yes, you're a little energy, you're a bit tapped on energy, as it were.
Yes, and I'm struggling a bit even with walking at the moment, after all the stairs.
The head of the cane, that phoenix, is still warm. It's like it's been put next to a fireplace for a couple of hours, and there's still some residual warmth in the metal.
I'm sort of absent-mindedly stroking it with my thumb, thinking about what happened, trying to figure out where it came from. I'm going to need to figure this out.
Excellent.
If Fraser realizes, kind of with everything that's going on, hopefully he'll have an eye to her ladyship, and if he realizes just how worn out she is by the whole adventure, he will offer any assistance, offer his arm if required.
Understood. And getting down to Paul's room isn't too terribly hard. He wakes up after a few knocks on his door and comes to the door in his nightshirt. Oh, sorry. Is everything all right?
Not exactly, Paul. Please put on some trousers and come with me, if you will.
Oh, right away.
And bring your bag.
Oh, understood. About a minute or two later, he steps out, looking far more put together than when you found him. He ambles down the hallway.
I'll take him fairly swiftly, straight to Richard's room. Won't say anything in the corridor, but once we get into the room, I'll explain what's happened.
Oh my God. I won't even ask what caused it, but how long has he been like this? He steps forward and immediately begins unwrapping things from his bag.
I'd say maybe an hour, if that.
An hour? He opens up Richard's shirt, the pieces of it that are left, and then inspects the wound in his stomach. Good Lord, he was impaled.
Time to show your quality, Mr. Maverhaven. Do what you can.
He checks his neck. You see him look over some vital pulse areas. It's weak, but he still has a pulse. We're lucky.
Well, he's in your hands now.
Let's see how you fare, Professor. Well, that's 28 on Paul's medicine roll, so that is very good. So Paul gets to work. He sits with him for what seems like quite a while. He inspects and cleans the wound, gives him a good solid lower torso wrap, basically from his waist all the way up to right under his, basically right where his sternum is. You can tell that wrap is very tight. You've seen wraps like this before in the field, and that is meant to basically keep his guts in from spilling out anymore.
Fraser will be on hand to lend assistance as and when required.
Paul doesn't seem to ask for much in assistance, really. I mean, he asks at one point to get a clean bowl of water.
Yeah, I'll pass him towels and water and bandages or anything like that he needs.
But over the next hour, he's basically up to his elbows in all of the work that he has to do. You can tell that the skin on Richard's chest has not been affected by the wounds per se, but it still is this very strange myriad of colorations. Something has changed him.
Paul, what do you make of this, whatever it is, on his chest?
Reminds me of almost some sort of irritation, maybe some sort of internal diseasing of the flesh.
That doesn't sound good.
I've never seen anything like it as far as the colors go, but the movements, the way it expands outward from the neck is concerning. Has he complained about it at all?
Well, you know the professor. Not as such, no.
Known him recently to be a bit mad, to be honest.
Well, he's certainly very dedicated to his research, shall we say.
At what cost?
Yes, I've asked myself the same question.
All right, then. What he needs now is rest, and
Right.
I'll check on him in the next few hours.
We'll make sure that he gets some rest. Mr. Griffith as well could probably do with your assistance. He's a little beaten up as well.
Well, at least still he's amongst the mobile, yes?
For the most part, aye.
I am going to assume that Mr. Griffith would want to be in the same room as Richard. But there's no bed for him, and so Paul asks him to go back to his room, which is, of course, right next to the professor's, because he needs to be laying down to recover.
I'll offer to sit with the professor. Well, I'm sure that Simon will protest that he wants to stay with the professor, but I'll try and placate him and say, I'll be here and you go with Paul for now, and then when you're feeling better, you can come and take over, and hope that he just goes away and gets some sleep.
Well, he does go back with Paul into his own room after a little bit of light protest, and then Paul successfully performs medicine on him as well.
Presumably there's a chair in Richard's room, which I will seat myself on.
There is.
And breathe a heavy sigh and light my pipe.
Over the next hour or so, Professor, you recover 2 hit points.
That's very good news.
And you will come to at some point. But I'd like to, if we can, I'd like to move our camera to Miss Bellinger, who has, now that you're in the hands of your own caretaker, she has set out, or she is going to be inspecting the pieces of the simulacrum she has been able to obtain.
Exactly, yeah. So I would go back to my room and lay the pieces out. I know that there was a time that I feel like I communicated, or that Comte came to me when I was trying to put them together. And so part of me is trying to see if I can get him to come back again.
In what way would you do this? In what way would you attempt to evoke the Comte?
When I got him to come visit me when I was trying to put the pieces together, I would probably be doing the same. I would be kind of examining how the leg fits in with the torso, if there's any way that I can match them up or connect them, or in some way attune with all of the pieces that I have together now.
So you lay the first leg piece out. So you have the torso and the leg and the left arm. And you realize something, that you have now the entire left portion of the simulacrum.
Ooh.
You have the arm, the leg, and then, of course, the torso. So now you realize that you simply need 3 more pieces, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would have the head, the right arm, and the right leg. And you begin to feel this rush of energy, that you're so close now, that you're so much closer than you were when you stepped off that first train. You feel this rising pressure in your chest because you want to go right now and search out the next piece. But at the same point in time, the lower half of you is exhausted. And so you're sort of at a war with yourself as you lay out these pieces and you think about who or what may lie ahead. And there is a thickening fog that comes to your doorway. You see it roll under the door. And it rolls into the room and sort of begins to exist near the pieces.
Ooh. If I have them laid out, I mean, the only real place to lay them out would be on my bed. I'm wondering if he'll come to me more. Like I'm fighting this urge to rest, but I know that in my fleshy human form, unfortunately, my body does need rest, even if my mind feels like it does not. Now that the mist is with me, I have the pieces here, lay with the pieces to rest and see if I can commune with him better that way.
You lay down in bed with the pieces, feeling the material, that sort of almost porcelain quality that it has in its temperature. So it's just cool to the touch in some areas, but the simulacrum itself is fairly heavy. You lay down with these mannequin-like pieces, and the fog rolls over them and rolls over you in the same way. And you're coaxed to sleep by this fog. It encompasses you in the bed as a blanket would. And you drift off to sleep, exhausted, yet exhilarated in what you might find soon.
Maggie's finally found a man that appreciates her. Unfortunately, he's dead.
Well, I mean...
Dead adjacent.
Correct. So we'll leave you with your foggy visitor there for the moment, and I'll ask the professor to make me a constitution roll.
Richard has a constitution of 60, and that was a 91.
All right. You're, of course, allowed to push the rolls should you so choose. I'm happy to give you some flavor text if you'd like.
Yeah, that might be useful.
You come to in a rather strange place. That is a bedroom you've been in before. And you have this painful, searing feeling in your gut. Like someone stopped down to the smithy and they've heated up a horseshoe and they've forced it into your stomach. You know, or maybe a more modern presentation of that would be you've had a very, very hot curry. And you've had it at the wrong time, and your stomach is paying the price for it now. That's the kind of pain you're in. It sort of forces you onto your side to cough, and coughing, unfortunately, is the last thing that you want to do. And so you are feeling the effects of such.
Ouch. I am cringing as a player. I think Richard's going to stay perfectly still.
Okay. Fair enough. In that regard, Mr. Fraser, he does not stay perfectly still. He coughs, and you see his body rack with this coughing, and his skin becomes very flush.
I'll get a cloth, soak it in cold water, and apply it to his forehead, attempt to cool him and soothe him. Just lie still, Professor. Lie still. You're going to be all right.
Did everybody get out?
Aye, we're all safe. We're all safe. Don't you worry about that. You just lie still.
Yes.
I'll just sit with him.
The last thing that you remember, Professor, the last thing is this look on the marionette dressed as Death as it stabbed its scythe into you. You can almost see the movements of the face there, of that skull, as it swept its way away from you, thinking that it had dispatched you. And then the Turk followed up with his own weapon, that nasty scimitar. And your mind sort of goes blank after that. You remember being warm. You smell like you've been around a campfire. And you get that sort of intermingled with the antiseptics of, you can only imagine, as Paul's handiwork. But unfortunately, you are conscious.
So Richard, at this point, he's kind of thinking, how much of that was a dream and how much of that was real? He doesn't really know. Well, I don't know if you've ever cut your arm or something really deeply. There's kind of two parts of to this part of the experience. Half of you wants to look at it and see how bad it is, and half of you dares not. And at the minute, he's in that kind of, yeah, I'm kind of breathing. It's painful, and I'm going to leave it at that. Not going to work out what's going on. That's where he is.
I think all this probably plays out for you, Mr. Fraser, as sort of minor movements. As this mental guesswork is probably happening with the professor, you can see that he's probably struggling a little to stay in one state.
Fraser will just remain by his side and press the cold, damp cloth to his forehead every so often, mutter soothing words as best he can. He himself is still a bit of a state. He hasn't cleaned himself up or anything like that yet. He considers himself to be one of the more fortunate members of the party.
He's full-on hospitaler now. He's taking on that leg of things. Lady Elizabeth, the evening for you, what is remaining of it anyway, is probably spent letting the chair here in this room do its work, letting your body relax against it. And you come to this sort of revelation here in the room that during the time when you were on that platform, at top of that clock tower, the getting up part was one thing. But once your mind had forced your body into a movement and the pace and tempo and adrenaline of the scene had taken over, you don't remember any sort of physical discomfort. There wasn't really even discomfort when it came to whatever happened with that burst of energy. It's really in the aftermath of it. The slope downward seems to be very difficult to deal with.
Well, that makes sense. It's easier to go up a hill with a cane than it is to go down a hill with a cane, so to speak. So I think while I'm sitting and resting, I'm just trying to think about what happened and try and think back over everything that I've read and studied and see if I can remember anything similar or related or that could give me a clue as to what might have happened.
All right. You have a few working tomes, at least one anyway, which you could attempt to glean some information through.
I'll see what I can do. Pull out the book. The one that I can open anyway.
Right.
Still can't open the other one. I'll get to that later.
Indeed. At some point.
At some point.
Bridge to cross. While you don't read German, the book does have a fair amount as far as illustrations go. And you do have some Cthulhu mythos.
Indeed.
And so you could attempt to lean on that and utilize the book as an assistant.
That is what I will do.
Okay. So it's a Cthulhu mythos roll with the rating of the book.
I'm not sure what that means.
So the way I play it is you make a Cthulhu mythos roll, and then the book itself has its own rating.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd add that rating to your roll.
Okay. My Cthulhu mythos is 5. Ooh. I got a 13. Let's see. So what's the rating?
I will find it shortly.
It's probably going to be a success.
I hope it is. I don't want to spend that much luck.
Oh, come now. It's a little luck between you and your keeper, right? You'll get it back someday.
Listen, I have 38 luck because someone used an empowered hand of fate against me, so I didn't get all my proper luck at the last refresh, so I would like to not spend more than I have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get it. Right.
Is that Nameless Cults, that book?
It is. It's in German. They have Nameless Cults, but they have them listed twice. They have it listed in English, and if memory serves correctly, you have the German version.
Correct.
All right, so it is Cthulhu Mythos rating
plus 10 I have here if you've read the whole thing.
Yep. If you've read the whole thing and she hasn't.
Yeah.
And so I will give you half of that. So we'll give you 5.
So that would put it at 10. And I got a 13, so I'll spend 3 luck and make that a success.
Certainly. All right. So delving into the pages here, the rather well-written German version of whatever you have, you see some of the leftover marks that were left by previous handler. I think that's the nicest way to put it. She bled an awful lot, and it seems that she bled into the book a little bit. And so with every other page or so, there's another bloody fingerprint on a few of these pages. Sort of hard to get away from. But inside the pages, it does speak of an event, it seems, at least in some of these pictures, where flames are coming out of somebody's chest directly from like the center of them. You see along here in some of the writing in German that it looks like they're talking about something very specific in regards to, you're making some assumptions, of course, but you believe it's some sort of evoking event, some sort of a drawing up of the spirit, a calling forth of this. It looks like they're making a lot of references to the sun. So they're equating this flame to like the flame of the sun, maybe. What you realize is that you really need to learn German.
Quite.
It does give you an insight, which is it appears that this person that they're depicting here has some sort of runic markings on their arms. They've either tattooed themselves or they've painted themselves in a sort of way to evoke this. You get to this next page and you get a detailed hand sketch of marks that go on the inside of the forearm all the way up the bicep and over their chest. You can't really tell whether or not it's a man or a woman because they don't depict it as such. But there are some very specific occult shapes and letterings that they use. And so if you'd like a little more background knowledge, I'll give you an occult roll.
Okay. My occult is pretty good. So I have 60. We'll see what the dice give me. 007.
Okay. These runes that they have detailed onto their body are all Futhark. That is a pretty clear line for you as far as where this is probably some sort of northern European, either that or perhaps something that was used by someone in Germany. They're depicting the cult use of tattooing into the skin. And they're using some sort of chant here to press that knowledge, that power into someone's skin and then be able to evoke it out. It's the closest corollary that you have to what you've seen.
I'll make some notes and also make a mental note to have Mr. Fraser get me a German dictionary at some point. So I have to know more.
Certainly. You do manage to spend a couple of hours in the deep meditative research. And the pictures here are, especially with the accompanying blood, are rather evoking. Because it seems that young hotel worker, her blood has gotten on more than a few of these pages.
And I've been trying very hard not to think about that incident for a while. So now I'm having to think about it, and it's not pleasant.
Very well. Maggie, I'd like you to make me a power roll as you dream.
That is a regular success for me.
You are consciously attempting to evoke a specific person.
Yep.
And you work to take this image of the Comte, use a very recent and powerful memory, which is the two of you standing on the edge of the clock tower, hand in hand, prepared to leap. And every time you feel this image in your mind swirl into and solidify, there's the image of a person who pushes that cloud, that apparition, away. And you can't make out who it is. But every time you get closer and closer to having the Comte completely solid for you, he's broken into a new, fresh cloud. And you begin running from place to place. You don't really understand the place that you're in. Is it a house? Is it a room? Is it an apartment? Is it maybe back staying with Aunt Edith? But every place you go to look to find a new spot to get a hold of him, he's pushed away from you. And so you spend most of your time as you're sleeping in what seems to be endless frustration.
When Maggie wakes up, she would likely be crying just from all of the sheer frustration and disappointment of it, and being racked with this disappointing dream the entire time that she's trying to rest.
When you wake up, your chest hurts again, like it did before. Your arm at the elbow is in an enormous amount of pain, and you notice that on the inside, midway or so inside your thigh now, there is some sort of bruising that has taken hold.
This is obviously what the caterpillar goes through when it's in a cocoon.
Of course.
I'm just waiting to slough off my current form so that they can all see me for who I really am now.
Morning arrives in Venice in a struggled fashion. It seems as if even the clouds do not wish to lose their grip and give Venetians the sunshine again. The hotel is quiet. There is not the endless sort of movement from downstairs that you are used to, Mr. Fraser, at least hearing. And even though you wake relatively early in the morning, as you are wont to do, it feels like a tomb in here.
I think I'll have spent the night sitting by Richard's side, unless Simon came through and took over from me. But I'm guessing he probably, once Paul had finished tending to him, fell into a fairly deep sleep.
Oh, yeah.
And come 8 o'clock, thereabouts, he will go back to his room, very quickly make himself a bit more presentable, and pop downstairs to get a breakfast tray for her ladyship as well. And he'll come back up and gently knock on her door. Doesn't want to wake her too early because it's been obviously a somewhat trying and exhausting evening, but a cup of tea always helps to settle one and make a bad situation a little better.
Absolutely, sir. So you are having some difficulties in the morning. The front desk tells you that half the staff have not shown for work.
Oh.
And so...
Allow me. I am perfectly happy to assist as and when required. If it's all right with you, I'll make the tea myself.
Oh, we wouldn't of course ask you to do anything like that. If you just give it just a few more moments, we'll have things straight away.
Thank you.
It does take a few more moments. The morning paper is not here. The staff let you know that it was never delivered. And the gentleman who let you in last night is a standing post near the front desk. You can tell just behind him, just on the wall near where the service area is, there's a sort of a suspicious hat covering the barrel end of a rifle. It's propped up against the wall. He's done somewhat of a job to hide the rifle amongst some of the other articles there, but it's fairly clear that he's keeping it nearby, and he's resting on a stool.
I'll ask him if he's managed to get hold of the railway station.
Early this morning, yes. It seems some of the lines are moving, but the black shirts there are taking careful eye on all of the passengers, and so some of the trains won't run till evening.
I see. Do you have a timetable there of the various lines that run out during the course of the day?
Oh, certainly. That is the biggest concern. He gives the paper over to you, the times. The biggest issue we're having is that some of the normal rail traffic is not being allowed to move at all. In fact, so far only the Orient Express is being kept moving.
Oh, I see. Oh, right. Well, very interesting. And he'll just kind of a little distracted perhaps while he's waiting for the breakfast to be prepared, go through the timetable. Basically, what I want to see is what trains run out during the course of the day that we could possibly get as an alternative to the Orient Express to get us to our next destination a little bit earlier. So even if we have to, change once or twice, if there's something that leaves within the next couple of hours. But of course, if Richard is in no fit state to move, then that's going to put the kibosh on that a little bit. We might have to wait for the Orient Express, compounded, of course, by the fact that there might not be any other trains other than the one that we're planning on getting on.
Sure. Your tray comes out. They've got tea and then some fairly simple breakfast items there.
Perfect.
The hotel staff and you've been speaking with says, I wouldn't bet on any other train leaving here or being allowed to. It's fairly clear. Only thing that they're not having any sort of luck shutting down is port.
The port, you say? Huh.
Yeah, they can only do so much when it comes to that. So much of Venice's business runs by sea.
I see. What destinations would any vessels be likely to be traveling to today?
Oh, I'd have to check at the port for you. I wouldn't know offhand.
Well, I'm more than happy to do that myself. But if you do have a free moment, it'd be very much appreciated if you could find out for me. It may be that our continuing journey might be better affected by water rather than land.
No, I assume that several of them will probably run south, perhaps to Rimini or maybe even Ancona. Just places along the boot, as it were.
Ah, yes, indeed, yes. Well, it's something to bear in mind anyway. But these black shots, have they said what they're specifically doing here? Are they looking for somebody? Have they got a goal in mind, or are they keeping tight-lipped about the whole thing?
Why don't you make me a persuade roll, sir?
Oh, blimey, persuade. Not the most persuasive villain, but I'll give it a shot. Yeah, this is going to be... Fraser tends to try and get by on charm rather than persuasion.
Certainly.
Well, that is 13, and I have a persuade of 10. I'm going to spend 3 luck.
Will you?
And make that a success. Yes, I am.
He sits forward on the stool a little bit and says, I wouldn't normally say this, but I think that they're looking for someone. And I think that they're looking for someone here in the waterfront, here. And there's a reason. I've got my rifle. We keep a lot of very important clientele.
I see. So I think I kind of glance left to right just to make sure we're not being overheard. Somebody in this hotel they're looking for, you think?
That's what I think. Yeah, they've been to the front door 2 or 3 times. And I've had to remind them that the bar and the hotel are for paying guests only.
I see, of course, yes. Do you have any idea who specifically it might be?
I think it's somebody politically motivated they're looking for. I think maybe they might be looking for a woman.
Interesting. Very interesting. A woman in the sphere of politics. Well,
I think that might also be why the Orient Express is still running, too. It's well paid for by many, many passengers to make sure that train keeps running.
Yes, of course. Yes, there are powers indeed that are rather greater than even the might of El Duce, I believe he is known as, is he not?
Yes.
Well, you've given me much to ponder on. Indeed, I won't pry any further and ask you to name any names because it's clear it's a matter of some degree of confidence. But what you have told me is most interesting.
How long will you be staying then?
Well, we had intended on leaving perhaps today or tomorrow. It really does depend on what form of transport we are able to get out of the city. Ideally, we would travel on the Orient Express, but, if we can travel by boat, then that might make a refreshing change.
Well, I need to take a walk around anyway and see what we see this morning. So, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take a peek down at the docks area and see what's moving. I can let you know if there's anything coming about.
Well, that'd be very much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you for your time and trouble. Well, I won't keep you any longer. This tea's getting cold, so I'll speak to you later on today, no doubt.
Yes, of course.
And I'll head on upstairs with much to think on, and tap on her ladyship's door.
Yes, who is it?
It's Mr. Fraser, your ladyship. I have a breakfast tray for you, if you'd like it.
Do come in, thank you.
Here we are. We have some tea and some pastries, I believe. Not much. They're somewhat short-staffed today, but they've done their best with what they have. How are you feeling this morning, your ladyship? Rested, I hope?
A little worn out, let's say. I would prefer not to be climbing any more stairs, if I can at all avoid it. But better for the sleep, thank you.
Aye. It might interest you to know that I've spoken with one of the staff here, and well, it is their belief that the black shirts here are they think they're looking out for somebody in particular, a woman, I believe, and with some political connections.
And they think she's here?
That is the impression that I have been given, yes.
Interesting.
Staying at this hotel, and I don't myself recall seeing or meeting anyone who might fit that description, but, well, it is a little troubling.
I just think about the fact that the princess has already left town, and I am glad of this. Just to myself. Just in case it's her. Well, thank you, Mr. Fraser. We should perhaps be making our plans to leave. I would prefer to leave today, if at all possible.
Yes, quite so. There is a possibility we might be able to travel by boat if the railway is problematic. From what I understand, many of the local services have been stopped entirely by the Blackshirts. The Orient Express is running it is running presumably to time, but I have no doubt that they will be there, observing all the comings and goings and see who gets on and gets off. So maybe a little more prudent for us to see if we can take a boat that's heading in the same general direction and then pick up another train to continue the next leg of our journey.
Shudder slightly. Well, I would prefer to avoid the water if at all possible, but we do need to leave, so whatever gets us out of town the fastest.
Yes, well, I'm going to go and check on Professor Courtney just now and see how he's doing and have a word with Paul, see if it is indeed wise for him to move today. It may be that if it's impossible for him to travel, then that ties our hands somewhat in the matter.
Yes, I suppose so. I do hope that is not the case. I would rather not stay around here with sort of gesture at the window to indicate everything.
Yes, indeed. It has been a somewhat tumultuous visit.
Quite. Mr. Fraser.
Your ladyship, yes.
Did you happen to see last night what happened with the fire?
Well, I was wondering if you were going to bring that up, your ladyship. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what I saw. There was no fire, and then there was fire, and, well, it appeared to spontaneously erupt from, somewhere in your direction, as far as I could tell.
Quite. I was wondering if you'd perhaps seen what actually occurred. Very well. I have some thoughts.
Thoughts you care to share, your ladyship, or thoughts you wish to ruminate on in private?
Things I wish to ruminate on, but also thoughts of the sort that I don't think your Presbyterian upbringing would approve of, Mr. Fraser.
Well,
magical sort of things.
Well, to be honest with you, your ladyship, the last well, days, weeks. I'm not entirely sure how long it's been now. It's all been very confusing. My thoughts and beliefs have, well, they've taken something of a battering, it has to be said. I think perhaps I'm a little more open to miracles, shall we say, for want of a better word. I mean, after all, the Bible does teach us that our Lord raised a man from the dead, changed water into wine. These things do occur. And Moses cast his staff on the ground and it became a snake in front of the great Pharaoh. So, well, I suppose if one credits that as being truth, then, well, one must keep an open mind to such things, even in this day and age.
And smile a little bit. It's nice to see your mind opening a little, Mr. Fraser. And I don't think it can be quite denied that, however it occurred last night, it was, what was the word used? Miraculous? I doubt we'd be here otherwise.
It's entirely possible we would not, despite the best efforts of Mr. Griffith and myself and the professor and Miss Bellinger. Speaking of, does something strike you as a little odd about Miss Bellinger's behaviour of late?
Do you mean the parts where she's falling around, grabbing young men by parts that should not be touched, or do you mean the bit where she seems to believe she's a deity?
Her, well, not to put too fine a point on it, what appears to be her delusions of grandeur. She was running out onto the platform or whatever it was in front of that clock tower with the man that we saw in France, the man that, well, I don't need to tell you what he did, but she seemed to be single-minded in her determination to travel with him. I'm very worried about her, Your Ladyship. I'm very, very worried about her.
Don't tell her this, but I'm concerned for her safety as well. But we've been under quite a bit of mental strain, and as we know, she's been carrying the pieces of the simulacrum, and I'm fairly certain that has a deleterious effect on one's mental health. So, we must keep an eye on her, Mr. Fraser, and see what we can do. Perhaps it'll wear off with some rest and some time, but there's not really a whole lot that can be done at the moment, I don't think. But it's good to know you're also aware of the issue.
I wonder if Paul might be able to prescribe something calming to her, or perhaps, I mean, he worked at the hospital in France, and well, he may have some experience of this kind of behaviour. I agree. I think there's no doubt that the strain, physical and mental, of these items, whatever they are, is telling on her.
Yes, well, I will have a word with Paul about this. I do beg your pardon, Mr. Fraser, but a young man might take it a bit amiss for another man to come and speak about a woman he is not attached to and her mental health. It rather reeks of hysteria. So, I think perhaps I should do the talking.
That is a very sound proposition, Your Ladyship. Yes, absolutely.
I will do what we can, Mr. Fraser. Now let's go about our morning and perhaps speak to Paul about whether the professor is well enough to travel, and then we should make arrangements as a group for leaving town.
Yes, I have one of the staff here looking into the traffic by sea at the harbour here, and so hopefully I should have a little more information on what's feasible there a little later in the day. I'll go and check on the professor just now and see how he's doing. Thank you, Your Ladyship. Thank you.
speaking of the Professor, you are being visited already by Paul, who has come in early this morning to try to see to some of your wounds, your bandages. He wakes you and puts you into a position where he can properly redress the bandages, and he gives you something immediately for the pain which is already aching from the night's rest before. He is going to properly inspect the work and then roll another medicine roll.
Good old Paul applying the pain relief as always.
Clearly. Ooh. No.
That's either a good noise or a very bad noise.
It's a very good noise for you.
Ooh.
So Paul's rolled a 5. And so on extreme rolls when it comes to medicine, I like to do something fun. And so I'm going to have you roll a D3 for me.
D3?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a 6, so that's a 3.
So you're going to heal 3 hit points. Rather than an hour, you'll have miraculously recovered them here within this medicine roll. And it is part and parcel to the hit points that you'll have recovered sort of overnight. So we'll glom those together and add an extra 2 in. And so all the characters, because they're pulp characters, will recover 2 hit points from last night. And so that will also help as well. And then it's been about 7 hours. So for those of you who have been without, say, MP, you can recover 7 points of MP as well. Not that anyone here used any MP yesterday. No one's casting spells here.
Definitely not.
Not a
Nope.
single point.
Nope. Well, that puts me back almost at full for magic.
Yeah. Wonderful. So, Professor, you're definitely feeling better. You are definitely feeling like you could probably sit up today. You're not sure if it's Paul's handiwork or if it's maybe you're recovering from this one a lot faster than you thought. Maybe the wound wasn't as bad as it was first pretended. Maybe your body just gave out from shock rather than being completely on death's door. You're not sure, but you're thankful anyway.
That's good news. I mean, if Richard's feeling a bit better, he'd probably use whatever the appropriate means is in this hotel to summon some sort of room service and see if he can obtain some cup of tea.
Yes, room service comes in the form of something you weren't expecting before, and that would be one James Fraser, who enters after a light knocking while Paul is putting stuff back in his medical bag.
Good morning, Paul. How is our patient this morning?
Recovering quite well.
Splendid. Do you feel up to a cup of tea, Professor Courtney?
Oh, yes, a cup of tea would be fantastic, thank you. I feel like I've not had one for ages.
Splendid. How do you take it? Milk, sugar?
Yes, white with, no sugar.
There we are. I'll join you. Paul, would you like a cup of tea?
Oh, I was going to go check on Simon.
Of course, yes. Well, how are you feeling, Professor? A little better, I hope. You've suddenly got a little more colour than you had last night.
He'll take a quick sip of his tea and you'll hear a little slurp. Yes, thank you. All the better for the tea, I think. I'm not quite sure what happened, but I feel more myself. Yes, you're quite right.
Yes, you were in a bit of a sticky situation last night.
What? I mean, I remember, Maggie was, I don't know, in some sort of peril as far as I can remember, and I was trying to push one of these things into another to make a path, and I don't know how much of it I dreamt and how much of it actually happened, but yes, some nasty sort of thug with a blade, some sort of sword, some sort of Eastern thing, I think.
Yes, a scimitar of some description, I believe, and indeed, I'm still not quite clear exactly what happened there. Some form of motorized or automatons or something. Or I don't know. I really don't know. It was all a little beyond me, but there was somewhat of a stramash, and the the Comte Fenelic. He appeared on the scene, and there was some sort of connection between him and Miss Bellinger. I'm not entirely sure what that was all about, but
well, that's a connection. How do you mean?
Well, they appeared to be, well, I hesitate to say in cahoots, but they appeared to be acting in some way in concord with one another. He did not seem to wish to harm her, nor us, for that matter, from what I could tell. It was just merely observing, but I certainly didn't get a feeling that he wished us anything other than ill overall.
Yes, well, that's. I don't know. Somewhat concerning.
Yes, indeed it is. And you very nearly took quite a fall.
Yes, it was quite some way up, wasn't it?
But we have the item, though. You'll be glad to know.
Yes, Simon. How is Simon? I remember being stuck in a hole with him now.
Yes, he was somewhat injured in the fracas, but he's recovering in his room. He's resting for now, but he will survive. He's a strong fellow. He'll pull through fine.
Yes, he is. Well, that's well, some good news, I suppose.
Do you think you're up to travelling today?
I don't know. What does Did you ask Paul?
I haven't had a chance to speak to him about it as yet, but I wanted to see how you felt in yourself first.
Well, I mean, I'm mentally fine. I'm a little tired, as you could imagine, but perhaps I should go for a brief walk and see how I fare. But I think I should consult Paul first.
Yes, I do suspect he will probably want you to rest and recuperate for as long as possible, but time is not on our side. The black shirts are here. They are guarding the stations. They are clearing the streets.
Right, yes.
It is quite likely that they have a particular goal in mind. I believe that there may be somebody in this very hotel that they have their sights on.
Yes, I mean, maybe, I don't know, some sort of wheeled chair would be appropriate if I can't walk, but I'm keen to get out of here.
Indeed, a bath chair or something of the like. That's an excellent idea. I'll speak to the staff at the hotel and see what they can come up with.
Yes.
I'll get on that right now. Enjoy your tea, and I'll chat the door and see if Paul can come and speak with you about the possibility of travel later on in the day. We're going to need to discuss exactly how we leave the city, and whether we wait until the evening for the Orient Express, or whether we find an alternative route.
What other routes would there be?
There are several boats traversing the sea, so we may be able to pick something up at the harbour, which is going in the same rough direction as we're headed. But
after what we saw in the canal, I mean, isn't that a little risky?
Well, that is something that we will have to discuss, I think. I believe there are risks involved in whatever decision we make. It is just a matter of the path of least resistance, so to speak.
Yes. I don't seem to have any easy choices at the minute, do we?
And I don't think they're going to get any easier, Professor.
No.
On that note, Miss Bellinger, you get a knock on your door.
Yes, who is it?
It's Paul.
Oh, come in.
He steps in. He's dressed for the day and then has his doctor's bag. I think Mr. Fraser is keen to leave. Are you resting with the pieces now?
Well, I thought it might help.
Oh.
It might help me talk to Fenelic.
Talk to him.
Yes, the most magnificent thing happened yesterday, Paul.
Truly, what was it?
Well, I've come to know my true abilities and my true powers. And actually, I'm a little bit concerned. I was going to tell Richard this, but I can talk to you too. I'm concerned about Fraser.
In what way?
Well, I think he's holding me back from achieving my full potential.
Holding you back?
Yes.
He sits down in the chair next to you, next to the bed, says, in what way is he holding you back?
I feel that my body, not the one that I'm currently in, but the one that's inside what I'm currently in, I think that it has a greater potential. We saw these things in the water, Paul, and it's like a spark ignited in my brain. And I know the truth now, and Fraser is holding me back from it. I could have achieved flight last night.
Flight?
Yes.
Fascinating. Paul seems to lean in a little bit. I think it's very important that you figure out what you need to figure out. You tell this story. There must be so many thoughts that you have.
Oh, my mind is racing, Paul.
I would love to listen, to hear what you have to say.
Where should I start?
Well, I think several of the group, including Simon, are very keen to leave the city. They're very concerned about some of the things that are happening here. I noticed a few things yesterday that were not pleasant. And so I tend to agree that it would be better to leave Venice as quickly as possible, to try to get clear of whatever things are happening here in the city and move on to the next step. So perhaps when we get aboard the train, you and I could speak about this at length, and I could, if you would be willing, I would like to take some notes to write some things down, because if this eureka moment has come for you, then it's very important that we document it. Don't you think?
Oh, yes, of course, Paul. That would be perfect.
Wonderful. Then when you're ready, I'll let the others know that we can begin our journey out of Venice. I know that they're very concerned to do so. Is there anything else that I can do for you? How are your the regular maladies that we've talked about before?
Well, I do still have quite a bit of pain, Paul, but does not a caterpillar experience pain in the cocoon when they essentially liquefy one form and become another? So I'm starting to feel, I think, a certain comfort with the pain.
Like it's transferring some sort of realization of truth.
Yes, exactly, Paul.
That you should lean into the pain and understand it.
Yes, like when you have a bruise in a lighter sense, and some bruises hurt, but sometimes there's also a pleasant feeling to them. You can't help but touch them.
I find that very interesting. He goes to his bag. Then he taps on the top of it. Perhaps no medicinal uses today, yes?
I think I'll be fine for today. I will let you know if things change, though.
Please do. And I know that the thoughts, of course, they must be just terribly, terribly strong in your mind, racing all around. But as best you can, save them for me, yes? We want to get them all bottled.
Yes, maybe I will work on organizing them for you, but they may just spill out. I can't guarantee.
Of course not. I would, however, encourage you to do the best you can to prepare them only for us. To spreading them around unrealized, uncategorized could be it could be too much for some people. You understand?
Oh, yes, I do understand. I don't think that they'll fully grasp the reality of it, the magnificence.
I couldn't agree more. Well, I'll leave you as you are, and when you're ready, let us know, and you can. And do you have space for all of those? He kind of points around to the pieces.
I'm not sure, but I need to keep them together and with me.
Perhaps I'll call the front desk and see if maybe there's a spare steamer trunk they may have around. I'm certain that we can find you something for it.
It is getting more difficult to carry them all. It was much easier when it was just an arm.
Of course. Well, thank you, Miss Mellinger. I'll be back as soon as I can.
Yes, we'll be talking soon, Paul.
He stands up and leaves you to your devices, as it were. So I know we have a lot going on, but I think for the moment, we'll close on the episode here. And then next episode, we can pick up with kind of how the investigators will actually remove themselves from Venice and what they might find along the way. And so thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Horror on the Orient Express. We'll see you next week.